So Paul prays that they would know, that they would have a deep knowledge and understanding of the will of God. What is God's will? God's will is that none would perish. God's will, God's desire is that everyone would be saved. Jesus came to seek and save that which was lost, to be a ransom for many, to redeem and restore all things. To put it probably or possibly too simply, God's will is salvation. God's will is redemption. That's what his desire is, and so that's what knowing the will of God is. How do you bring salvation to me so you can bring salvation through me? As with everything else with God, knowing is not an intellectual act. It's not learning a little bit of information. With God, knowledge always informs and transforms our character, the fabric of who we are, and the way that we live. If belief doesn't lead to action, it's not belief at all. Isn't that ultimately what James was trying to tell us in chapter 2 of his letter? Faith without works is dead, for as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. Paul's prayer was not simply that they would know God's will, but that in knowing they would do God's will. So let's start with a very pointed handful of questions tonight. Are we doing the will of God? Are you? Am I? As a church, City of Refuge, are we doing the will of God? If the will of God is salvation, if the will of God is redemption, are we, as the church in Burlington County, are we doing the will of God? Are we living from it, living in it, and living for it? Don't answer. Because I don't think we need to answer yet. I think we need to let the Scriptures answer for us. The NIV translates Paul's next words as "so that." So this means that there are some things that we cannot do. There are some things that cannot happen in our lives, no matter how hard we try, until we know, believe, submit to, and live from God's will. So there are some things that no matter how hard you try to overcome it, you can't overcome it until you choose God's will, which is salvation. There are some things that no matter how hard you try to build them up into your life, you cannot build them until you submit to God's will. Until you desire salvation and redemption above all things. That's when those things are sort of unlocked for us. There are some things that cannot happen until God's heart for salvation becomes my heart for salvation. Until the salvation of others matters to me more than anything else does.